Good evening and welcome to tonight's roundtable. Today is Wednesday, August 5th, and we are here on the Grayson Network. I am your host, Mr. Danny Ellison. I am joined tonight by two of my esteemed colleagues, Mr. Derek Grayson, candidate for the United States Senate here in the state of Georgia, and Miss Josie Cruz, candidate for the United States Congress in Georgia's 4th District. Tonight, we will be discussing the week in rewind, essentially, but fast-paced. A lot has happened this week, and we want to get in the next hour a little bit about, well, what's going on and how does it impact you? So we'll be talking about the polls. Are they right? Is Biden ahead? Is Trump behind? Or are they both polling pretty low? What about the stimulus? McConnell is now at the table saying he wants to have conversations. He's ready to make a deal with the Democratic House. We've got the mail-in ballot ruling from the federal courts in the state of New York. And we've got the Senate hearings that have been taking place all week and a lot to cover. Tonight, I want to start off with Mr. Derek Grayson. Let's talk about the polls, brother. The polls back in 2016 were pretty wrong. And I'd venture to say they may be now. What say you?
Let me unmute there. Hello, first of all, to everyone in Facebook land, to Josie, Danny, Scott, Lisa. I'm glad that you all are here. I posted about the polling a few weeks back, and it was a reminder to people that the polls are for one specific reason: to give one group hope and to take hope from the other. And the group that they are seeking to take the hope from, of course, is the conservatives and Republicans. Some people, and I know this from experience because I talk with people all the time on YouTube and Facebook, and often or not, people will hear something in the polls and will express to me their dissatisfaction or their feelings of being disheartened because of what somebody may have said here or there concerning Trump. And I have numerous videos of encouragement to get people to understand, let your hearts not be troubled. And I made many of those videos prior to the election, constantly telling people that Trump would be victorious. So what we are seeing now from all of this is that the media wants us to think that Joe Biden is leading, to discourage us, to make us think that we have no hope. Because one thing that history has shown us, when you take away a person's hope, you take away also their desire to stand and fight, because they believe that they are losing based on all of the things that they hear. And it's hard for them to imagine, how can President Trump overcome this now? They're blaming him for Corona. They are blaming him for the violence. They are blaming him because he's a racist. And now Joe Biden has the lead, and they haven't even had a debate. And now we've got mail-in voting. The cheating is going to be off the chain. I may as well just stay home. If you heard in the news today, and then I'll close, President Trump is trying to add another debate in September before the ballots reach potential voters, so that he can show people that he is a boss. Thank you, Mr. Ellison, for giving me that moment to speak.
Absolutely, Mr. Grayson. So what you talked about is actually very relevant today. We live in a day and a time where hope is constantly attacked. Everything from our households, our kids going back to school. What do our finances look like? What does it look like in the future of our occupations and jobs? And everybody's going to get coronavirus. Wear a mask, protect yourselves, leave everybody that you love. Hope seems to be under attack, but hope is there for those that are willing to look forward. Josie, coming to you. Hope is still alive. The federal courts ruled that in New York, the absentee ballots that were not counted, that they said were not going to be counted, the courts ruled that thousands of ballots in the elections in New York will be counted and that the elections will not be certified. Josie, what say you about all this excitement right now when it comes to our ballots in the polls?
Oh, Lord. I just wanted to refer that I see two different stages playing our feelings, right? One is the state of fear. People are living in fear because of so many things happening. Coronavirus is one of them. And then, in the other hand, they want to influence the conservative, the Republican, with the fear of, oh, we're going to lose the election because Biden is above uh, Trump. But I remember when the media used to say that Hillary Clinton was 80% above candidate Trump back in those days, and he ended up winning the presidency. So is fear when it comes to our body, fear emotionally, intellectually, spiritually. It's a war, it's a fear, a state of fear is a war psychologically. And that reminds me so much what a communist socialist country do to their citizens in order to control them.
But Josie, can I ask you that under those conditions, let's hypothetically compare Venezuela in your history there to America and where we are now. People are looking for hope. And as I said earlier, and as Derek alluded to, hope is there for those that are willing to find it. My question to you is, what is your assessment? Where do we find hope right now in the midst of all of these storms?
You see, the problem that I'm seeing is that specific word, hope. Americans, when I got here in 1993, the concept of hope in American mentality did not exist. It is what it is, and they used to go and check fact, right? Right? Check it. It's not about hope. When I say the concept of hope, I believe it's being manipulating us too with the hope. Oh, we're gonna hope about this. But hope is something like we are in an eternal stage of hope, of hoping, and not in the concept of, okay, we want deliverance. We want action. For example, mail-in voting, right? Voting by mail. That's one way of giving us hope, but in the long run, the result of is not who vote, is who counts the vote, who decide who wins. You follow the concept that I'm trying to say?
I think your definition of hope is right on and spot on for us. But what about the layman? What about the person that doesn't know what hope really is?
What I am afraid is that concept that I had about American way of thinking and action is being corrupted by this new socialist or psychological mentality of hope. And then that hope is going to extend not to 5 years, 10 years, 20 years. Look at Venezuelan people. They have hope with those politicians to take Maduro's down. And they still having hope, but there is no deliverance. There is no freedom coming. There is no action that will benefit the people who are in hope. So what I am, my skin, I got goosebumps, is thinking that my brothers and sisters, the Americans, who used to be so logic, it didn't let feeling get in the way when taking some decisions that will change not only the country, but to better the country. Now we are into this mentality of feeling getting in the way, and then hope is not deliverance. That what I'm trying to make the difference is we need to make the difference because we need action. The hope, I don't like that concept of hope because it brings me bad memories of how Venezuela has been. They lost 20 years in hope, and they are still under the influence and the tyrannic government of, in this case, Nicolás Maduro, which I call the socialist system, the communist system.
So Josie, what I take from what you're saying, and I want to break this down because I think you hit very, very, very instrumental points. And Derek, I'm going to come to you next on this one. So what I hear Josie saying is that hope alone doesn't solve the problem. And that in the mix of everything that we're looking for, we all hope that the stimulus package will be passed and come through to help those that need it, right? We all hope that our debt ceiling doesn't go through too high. We hope we don't wind up in World War III. But the action of the people to vote, to viably be involved in the process, back our president, stand by your values, stand firm in your faith, action. I think, Pastor Grayson, I'd be better off feeding you this question if I just simply said, faith without works is dead. What say you?
Absolutely. You know, sometimes Danny will make comments alluding to things of a spiritual nature. We know about the doctor that spoke and talked about demons and spirits, and the interviewer, you could tell that he was about making light of her comments. And she referenced the fact that CNN, in their effort to ridicule her, caused her video to go viral because everybody wanted to hear this doctor talking about demons and spirits, something that many people don't understand. And the word tells us that we don't wrestle against just flesh and blood, but spirits in high places. And when we talk about high places, we aren't necessarily talking about up in heaven. We are talking about spirits operating in high places here in government, okay, as well. And I try to get people, Mr. Ellison, not to be so one-dimensional in their thinking. And when I see that, sometimes I try to explain it a little better. It just depends on the attitude of the person. Someone called me unstable today and apologized for telling people to support me because of that fact. And the comment that I had made was, I am a slave in a new confederacy, forced to wear a mask with Nazi tactics. And this was prophesied by the Bible of that mark that it spoke of. And of course, they came out with, well, it's supposed to be a tattoo. Well, it's supposed to be this. Well, it's supposed to be that. This is not the end of the world event. And I just said, lo, have they no understanding? That is one-dimensional thinking. I said, I guess if I were to say, if you have but the faith of a mustard seed, you could say to this mountain to be thy removed and cast into the sea, and somebody will come and say to me, well, let me see you go and move Everest. Many don't understand that everything that we see or read rather in the Bible is speaking from a literal point of view. Some things are figurative. That Bible, Jesus is saying it doesn't matter how great your troubles are in life. If you have but the faith of a mustard seed, you can say to this mountain, those troubles, be thou removed and cast into the sea. And that goes to the point that you made, Mr. Ellison, about faith without works is dead, which is true. In our hope, we don't sit down and do nothing. In our hope, we stand up and do our part. And this is the last thing that I'll say, and I will yield. If you look at every miracle performed by Jesus, every single one, somebody else did something first. The man who lay by the pool, he was carried to the water. The woman who had the issue of blood, she made her way through the gathering throng and touched the hem of his garment. Lazarus, before Jesus said, come forth, someone else moved the stone. Jesus, before he turned the water to wine, someone else gathered the water. In all of this, Jesus is saying to his people, work while it is yet day, and I will do the rest. So our hope requires that we put something into it. Thank you, Mr. Ellison.
Man, folks, listen, tonight we are in here trying to talk about everything from the past week. And I've got some topics that I want to discuss, and it's starting to sound a lot like church, but this is the point. Before we dive into the problems of our society, I want you to take a moment to hear from our panel. And that is, if your hope is invested in the Almighty, advanced in the right place, then your work will reflect where your hope lies. Understand that it is now time for the people of the kingdom of God, those that are true conservatives that value our Constitution, its founding, and our forefathers that developed it, to step up and put your money where your mouth is. Folks, tonight I want to shift our conversation at this moment. Brian, I want to welcome you back, and I want to also welcome Annette to the panel. Annette, I'm going to come to you first. So the next topic that we're talking about tonight is the stimulus package that's on the floor right now. Congress battling it out. The president saying he'll back something as long as it's reasonable. And Mitch McConnell now at the table. United States Senate saying that he's willing to negotiate and make a deal. Well, Annette, what do you think about what's on the table?
I had to unmute myself. Good evening. Look, the Senate ought to be giving the people all the type of money they need, because remember, it's we the people. They are spending our money. Whatever money the people needs, give it to them. Businesses, whatever money that they need, give it to them. Whatever money seniors need, give it to them. Wherever money children need to properly be in school. And when I say to be in school, I mean to be at home and in school, whatever that they need, even if it's athletics. It could be athletics, by Zoom. Whatever people need, give it to them. Nobody should be fighting about money in the United States of America, because it's the we the people principle. McConnell is doing what is necessary. And of course, with nudgings by the President of the United States, because he knows that it's the people's money. And right now, given the slowdown in certain states are open, certain states are closed. Give the people what they need. If it's $600 more in unemployment, give it to them per week. Give it to them. There's no reason that the banks and Wall Street should have the majority of the money for the American citizens.
Annette, I think that many of us would agree with you, but let me follow on with that question to you, just to elaborate a little bit more. What say you to those that are holding the money hostage for political negotiation and personal clout?
Say that again?
What say you to the people that are holding the money hostage in the Congress by attempting to either A1 filibuster or block votes and send amendments and send our debt ceiling through the ceiling? What do you say about those people, those that are blocking it for personal political gain and or personal financial gain?
Well, let me tell you this. Let me tell you, it's always going to be jockeying, all right? Because you have to remember that people are working on their political capital. So politicians always work on the political capital, and I've never been a politician, even though people want to put me in that boat. I'm a statesman, right? And in our climate right now, sometimes it's the game, you know, if you want to call it monopoly, but it's the game that people play in seats of authority. But will the people win? Yes, the people will win, because there's pressure being put on them to do something. And thank God for the commander-in-chief, President Donald J. Trump, because he's pushing them. You're going to have to do something, because really, in the last 4 years, you have not done anything. So even though they're jockeying on the other side, the Senate is going to make sure, and that's one thing that I love about the United States Senate, and they're the ones to forge the key language that's going to help with this landmark legislation of extending the CARE Act, because, you know, really it is about people. But then juxtaposed to that, you know, if there's any jockeying, you know, they're trying to figure out, okay, well, how can some of my cronies, you know, or nepotism amongst my people get this money? And I think that's the jockeying that exists. But when it all is said and done, they have to do right by the people, or else the people are going to push them to be able to do right by the people. So I don't really worry about the people in Washington per se, because, you know, one thing, we live in a nation under God, and I know that a lot of people are praying for Congress to do the right thing. And thank God we have a Senate that's very strong, very prudent, and I would say that they are, you know, like the founding fathers, to be able to push through so that the people can get through these times, you know, given the nature of this COVID fiasco, lie, untruth that's going on.
Annette, welcome to the round table. Well said.
Thank you.
Well played.
Thank you.
Outstanding.
Thank you. You're pretty good too.
Well, I'm just here. All right,
Thank
Brian.
you.
Here we come, Brian. Let's change it up a little bit. But Brian, I want to give you a second to rebuttal and come in here in this conversation for a minute. I mean, we're at the round table. Let's talk about it. Annette just broke it down. I mean, slammed it and nailed it. The faith in the people, the people's ability. If it is the people's money, the Bible says, given to Caesar what is Caesar's, given to the Lord what is the Lord's. Right now, Caesar has taken from his people. Brian, what do we do about it? You got to take it off of mute for me, Brian.
Hear me now?
There you go. Come on.
Okay. I think that you have to look at what we're spending when if you look at the unemployment thing was $600 more than you would normally get. I think you need to be more reasonable on the unemployment, keep it back to what the unemployment would normally be. Not more than. You got to give people incentives to go back to work, not incentive to stay home. I would also make sure that if you're going to increase the unemployment like that, with so many doing it, we got to pay for it. So I think there should be, if you're going to do that, you need to actually have in the bill how you can pay for it, whether it be spending cuts somewhere else, whether it be spending cuts in the Department of Defense, or cutting departments that we don't need or are not constitutional. And that's what I would recommend.
Right. It sounds to me like, you know, a lot of halls echo the same thing and statement that you're making. But, you know, at the end of the day, one thing that we've noticed politically is this topic comes up all the time. How are we going to pay for it? How are we going to afford this? But in the history of the country in recent years, how are we going to pay for it has never been a question. Derek, coming to you, the printing press. We can just print it, right? We're the ones that hold the power of the coin.
So I want to phrase this correctly.
You know I'm here to start some mess, Derek, so come on.
Hey, look. So Annette was on point, and I understand where Brian is coming from. But here's the caveat. For the first time in history, the money that Washington, D.C. has borrowed from the press, increasing the debt. You know, we talked about this last week, without a care in the world because they have to, or else our economy would crash the very next day if they did not fund their ever increasing spending and their ever increasing deficits. It would crash. So they have to borrow the money. But for the first time in history, the money is being given to us interest free, virtually interest free, less than 1%. I forget what the number, 0.025%. I forgot what the number was, but that has never ever happened. So with that being said, we have always bailed out the one percenters, the banks. We all remember that fiasco. We bailed out General Motors. We bailed out Wall Street. They created this economic catastrophe. They created it. They made it to where people can't go to work. They made it to where people can't buy groceries, can't pay their rent. So they should fix it. The money is being printed. It's the people's money anyway. We're getting it interest free. Print it, give it out, and fix the problem. However, to Brian's point, and I'm not concerned about his point about who's going to pay for it. We already know it's being strapped around our necks like an albatross, one way or another. People need to have an incentive to go back to work. You can't give people more money to sit at home and do nothing if the economy is slowly starting to open up. So those are the things that President Trump is, that when he said, I want to make sure that it's reasonable, that's what President Trump is speaking of. We aren't trying to just have people sitting around on the dole, because that would cause this shutdown to be prolonged. And it's, for the most part, not going to be sustainable. And you would encourage sitting at home. And I have always said that welfare destroys the work ethic. And we don't want to destroy the work ethic. And we don't want Congress, even though we know it's going to be our children that would pay it back if it got paid back. We don't want more unnecessary debt being put on them. But I don't want to be hypocritical. We need to get rid of the Federal Reserve and the printing of money. This monetary system needs to go away. And this is why Hank Sullivan and I always have agreed that if we don't fix the monetary problem, nothing else matters anyway. That's the bottom line, but that is beyond the pale of understanding for many. They don't get it. We live in the now. So, I saved that conversation until, DC. Then we can have a real conversation about getting rid of our monetary system, because as it is, my dear brother, Mr. Ellison, we aren't going to fix that. It needs to go away. But right now, since we got it, let the people benefit this time because it's their money.
Outstanding, Derek. So, folks, listen, if you're just tuning in, this can be a little confusing when you come into a midsection or on the back end of a statement. So tonight we've talked about the polling numbers that say Biden's at 49% and Trump's at 41%, but the truth is those numbers and those statistics were real similar when it was Trump versus Hillary. So I remind you, the sleeper cell of those, we the people, are out there. Don't get your hopes up, those of you that are hoping that Trump will lose, because the Trump train's coming. It ain't shutting down anytime soon. We also talked about the stimulus, the package deal, the power of the dollar, and the fact that the dollar only matters if the people can use it. Outside of that, the dollar means nothing. It's a piece of paper with a bunch of people's faces on it. We've talked about the mail-in ballots out of the city of New York. And right now, folks, we're getting ready to turn into a hot topic. Brian, I'm going to come to you this first. Senator Hirono out of this great state of Hawaii walked out on Senator Ted Cruz in the middle of a debate where Ted Cruz announced not a single Democrat, not one, would go on the record and speak out against Antifa, call Antifa what they are, call Antifa what the president called them, or to label them duly what their title is. Not a single one. And in the middle of Senator Hirono walking out on Senator Ted Cruz, she came back to the table. And Ted Cruz on public record said, hey, just give me one negative thing about Antifa. The floor is yours. I'll yield my time. Just say one thing. And she refused and walked out in the storm. What say you when we have legislators that will get behind an organization like Antifa?
Well, she's definitely not showing the aloha spirit from Hawaii. As someone who used to live in Hawaii, I think that it's unconscionable that the Democrats are not calling out the Black Lives Matter movement, at least the actions of those that are being that are rioting. I have no problem with nonviolence. Nonviolence is fine if you're nonviolent, but then you should follow the examples of Gandhi and Martin Luther King and be nonviolent, and not be there when that's, when the violence is coming out. You don't want to be associated with that. So Antifa or anybody like that, anybody that's violent like that should be thrown in jail, period. And anybody that's espousing those any kind of a Marxist or communist view that's going against this country. I know the latest thing that happened was you look at the WNBA players that actually wore Vote Warnock T-shirts to a WNBA game to basically in protest to Kelly Loeffler coming out against Antifa and the Black Lives Matter. And I would look at it this way: you can do what you want, but you're employed by me. Guess what? You could be fired by me as well. And when it comes to sports, I don't have to watch. I don't have to watch Major League Baseball. I don't have to watch the NBA, the WNBA, or anything like that. If they're not going to respect us in our country, I'll take my money elsewhere, and they will lose. But before they do that, make sure they return every dollar that was ever spent on them for public financing of any of their stadiums, and make sure that comes back. Otherwise, I just disagree with what's going on in this country. We need to, it shouldn't be Black Lives Matter. You shouldn't talk about color. People matter. It should come down to people. And if you're going to start talking about people, talk about all colors of the rainbow. When you're going to talk about things, talk about the colors of our flag. We're red, white, and blue together. We're not red versus blue. That's the whole problem right now, is we are this red, it's the red team versus the blue team, and there's nothing in between. We need to start talking about us and start talking about our country, the unity that's involved. And one of the things to unify behind is our flag. And that's what I would do.
Brian, well said, brother. And as a former Army soldier, a retired member of the Army's branch, I thank you for your verbiage and your choice of words and your delivery there. Now, you bring up a valid point. And Derek, I'm going to come to you. I want you to opine in the situation with Senator Hirono actually violating what you would call the House and etiquette rules, House and means rules, right? Walking off on a senior ranking member sitting in the Senate in an open hearing, and that level of disrespect. But before that, I just want to throw a segue in there. Here just comes a monkey wrench. And that is, Brian brought up that there shouldn't be Black Lives Matter. We should be at a point in our lives where unity matters. And I am reminded of a time in 2001 where color, race, and creed had nothing to do with anything, and we as a country claimed, united we stand. It took 19 years to break an entire populace and break us into two rank and file aisles in which we are now finding ourselves obedient. Senator Ted Cruz was trying to bring us back to the level of being united, standing united, calling the separatists what they are, and saying that we the people are stronger and better. And Senator Hirono decided to represent her people in the state of Hawaii, a place that I hold very true and dear to my heart, and claimed that they don't care. And Senator, I would argue you are catastrophically wrong. Derek Grayson, what say you?
Theater. That's what I say. It's all theater. At the end of the day, if we were to consider the last 3 years, more has gotten done by way of executive order than by the actions of the Senate and the House. I still remember my awakening to what rhinoism was, and we discussed that last week. Ted Cruz was one of the biggest of them of all. It is one thing to go and talk about conservatism, to put on a show about how wrong the other side is. And all he accomplished in that display was, hey, look at what the Democrats are doing. Look at what they represent. The Democrats, yeah. The conservatives, they are bullies. They are talking about us. Black lives should matter. Never once saying all lives should matter. Brian often says, I am the unity candidate. And it's not that I'm not, or that Annette is not, or that Josie is not. I assume that Brian is trying to say to people, I'm more focused on all American citizens and not one segment of the populace. Well, you know, I know Annette and I know Josie. Neither of us are focused on one segment. I don't think anybody has ever seen a post on my wall promoting Black Lives Matter. I don't even do Cop Lives Matter because all lives matter. But the theater, Danny, accomplishes nothing for us. That's all it is. And it is replayed, overplayed, and promoted because it works. How does it work? It keeps us divided. I have often told people that this country is not racist, but the media and the theatrics of politics, they make race matter to us. And I'm not speaking to the collective here in this forum, but people in general. There are friends of mine who literally believe that the country is racist, based not in fact, but what they have heard. And I call it regurgitation. Brian, a white man, gave me an honor in his hometown, an endorsement. He didn't see my color. So it's special kind of people like us that understand that. Those that don't, they need our help, Danny. We got to pray for them. We got to continue to teach them. And we got to continue to speak the truth. Like Josie about socialism, like Annette. I had a conversation with her today and I said, you know, I listen to the words that people say and their actions. And I said, I always hear you mentioning your relationship with your father. And what do we know, Danny? Black fathers in the household, it's a dying breed in this country. A dying breed. But Annette is always putting that out there, not looking for a pat on the back, but that's how she was raised. That's in her. And these are the things that we need to put into people. Pick up a damn book and read. Pay attention to what's actually going on. Base your decisions on reality and not what somebody just told you. I yield. I'm sorry for going.
No, Derek, you're fine, and your passion is well founded, and your words are well received. I'm going to argue with you on one point. You said there's no room, no purpose, and no being in theater. And I will argue, and I'm pretty sure all of our viewers and your supporters will argue, there is room for theater, because if they didn't present it, your voice wouldn't matter. You, sir, are a voice. Josie Cruz is a voice. Brian Slawinski is a voice. Miss Annette, a voice. Our voice only matters because we get to argue truth. Truth doesn't matter if a lie is never told. Josie Cruz, coming to you. You have the next word.
I stand corrected.
Listen, there is an expression in the Venezuelan and the Latino culture, right? If he walks like a dog and quacks like a dog, and you find the feathers over there behind it, like a dog, is a dog. So, I mean, it's the only way that we could figure out who really these people are. They need to put up a show. So, look, Americans are not stupid, okay? Black people are not stupid. Spanish, Latinos, Asian people are not stupid. We are Americans, adopted Americans, and we are intelligent, and we can see through all this show, whatever you want to call it, show, stand up, whatever you want to call it. But when you guys were talking about Senator Hiromo is her name? Hiromo?
Yes,
The Hawaiian?
It's Japanese. Is her last name? Is Japanese, Hiromo.
Yeah, Hiromo. Okay. I remember the verse in the Bible. It came out in my mind. To my mind, it says, if Satan casts out Satan, he is divided against himself. How then will his kingdom stand? So why the Democrats, well, I don't call them Democrats. I call them communist Democrats. Because I believe the Democratic Party is being hijacked, period, from anarchists, atheists, Antifa, communists, all these groups that hate America. So the Democratic Party for me today is not the Democratic from Kennedy. The Democratic today is being hijacked. And to put the icing on the cake, it's being hijacked by the political Islam too. So if they start calling out Antifa, Black Lives Matter, KKK, that means they will call out themselves. How are they going to call out themselves? Because the other day I was talking to my campaign manager. I say, hey, these people are going to go out and they're going to start killing all the members of the KKK because of, white supremacy, whatever they want to call it. And then my campaign manager turned around and he said, what, they're going to kill themselves? Here it is. I yield.
That's an interesting take on that, Josie. I think that's well played. I would add to your statement, and that is, look, I think the Republican Party is being hijacked as well. I think the establishment has come in, and I think if we're going to put the right title on it and the right words on it, America is under siege. And we, the people, have to go and support our commander-in-chief who volunteered to hold the line. He stepped up front. He said, I don't want anything in return, but I'm here to be the commander if you guys will simply follow me. I think we're on the right track for that. Josie, I see your finger up before we move to the next topic. Go ahead.
You guys know that Ron Paul was talking this week with Ambassador Abrams. He's in charge of Venezuela situation, right? And then Ron Paul was asking this gentleman how he's trying to overthrow a socialist system with another socialist system. So America now is understanding now what we are facing today. It's not only Venezuela, it's not right 70 miles across from Miami, which is Cuba and Nicaragua and Mexico and Canada who are facing socialism. It's America who is facing socialism, which I call hardcore communism.
Absolutely. And I think you're right, Josie. And I think there's so many different terminology points that we could use. Annette, I'm coming back to you. I want to change it up a little bit today. A note that I have out of our extraction of things that have happened in the last week. Miss Sally Yates claimed that the Comey went too far. He went rogue in the Flynn investigation. That's a new update. Sally Yates' name back in the scene and on the stage. And are you tracking that, Annette? Are you familiar with the process? Can I bring you in for just a minute? Annette, are you still with us? Your mic is showing that you're muted. All right. Well, Alex Johnson, we'll come back to you in a net if we can get you back on. Alex, welcome to the show. Right now, we're in the middle of the Comey debacle again. Sally Yates at the front end. She's back at the table testifying that, you know what? Comey lost his mind a little bit going after Flynn. What say you, Alex?
I mean, I'm not really familiar with what's going on with Comey. I just dropped in, so I'm not sure what's already been said.
Of course, I would throw it at you. So to catch you up, I want to get you in. You know, we've only got a few minutes left on the show, and I want to hit a bunch of topics. The last topic of the night is going to be the executive orders. But to let you know, Alex, tonight we've covered the polls. The polls coming in saying Biden's at 49, Trump's at 41. We've heard and talked about the stimulus package, whether we move it, whether we don't. The fact that McConnell is just over it. He's ready to go and make a deal for the people. Even though the Democrats say, well, now we want something else since he wants to come to the table. We talked about the mail-in ballots, the federal courts ruling in New York that the mail-in ballots will be counted, those that were stricken from the record based on inaccuracies, and so on and so forth. And we've also talked about some of the Senate hearings that have taken place this week. So the Senate hearing that we're talking about right now is the one where Sally Yates came forward stating that in her testimony, Comey went rogue behind her back without her knowing against General Flynn, and that when she found out about it, she was infuriated. Alex, I'm going to come back to you about the executive orders moving on with the things the president's done with rural health and prescription drug prices. I'm going to go over to Derek Grayson real quick. Derek, talk to me. What do you think about Sally Yates' stance on Comey and the Flynn investigation? Is it valid? Does it matter? Is it a conversation we should be having?
No, Comey is a crook, and the only thing that needs to happen is he needs to go to jail. So Sally Yates, she's a liar. So I mean, that's just more theater. I'm more interested in justice being served. So that's all I have to say on that. That's just more theater.
Well, in the midst of all of that, Derek, I agree with you. Brian shook his head yes, and North and South gave us the confirmation. Josie agrees with you. I think we're all together on that answer. And I also know not to buy you any tickets to the Fox Theater because Derek is not about the plays. Alex, coming back to you, executive orders. Let's talk about pharmaceuticals. President comes out and signs executive orders here this week, dropping back a restriction on pharmaceuticals. And another Sally hits the news. Sally Pipes comes out and says, you know what, that's going to cause complications in the competitive market, but it's also going to cause complications in drug development. We're not going to be able to make medicine if we regulate the prices and make it affordable and save Americans. Alex, please break this down from a lawyer's perspective.
I mean, the thing about that gets me is like, let's be honest. I mean, this stuff's political theater because ultimately the idea, like we all know that you know, like yes, having an order like that will affect the market, but is the market currently free before the orders? And the answer is no, of course it's not, because of the regulatory state that's been being put into place for decades. And that's what is, of course, missing in the conversation and the narrative. I mean, the FDA, there's something called regulatory capture. It's the idea that existing market players are in bed with and cozy with the government agencies that are supposed to regulate them. So when President Trump signs an executive order saying like we're going to have prices at such and such level, I mean, yes, that would normally be an interference in the free market. I mean, if President Trump said that I had to charge a certain percentage and, you know, I would be arrested if I didn't for any of my cases and for legal services, that would be messing with the market. But it wouldn't really be a free market because you already have the bar making it so that other people can't practice law. This is very similar to what's going on with these drug prices. I mean, if a company wants to create drugs, you essentially have to be friends with and following all these regulatory burdens made by the FDA. So, I mean, the idea of doing this, I mean, I think it's disingenuous for the pharmaceutical companies to claim foul when they're the ones who've been buying and selling our politicians for years. I mean, what we should want to, you know, get rid of the FDA and have more private regulation in place of that. But right now, that isn't the system we're in. So, I mean, it's a lot more than I could talk about in 4 or 5 minutes, but bottom line is that, I mean, it isn't a free market to begin with. So Trump using the regulators who have given the pharmaceutical companies their current profits and benefits against them. I mean, maybe the pharmaceutical companies shouldn't have been trying to buy and sell politicians to begin with. I mean, that's, you know, I don't like it, but that's where we are.
Wow. So based on Alex's response, folks, ladies and gentlemen, I'm not going to anybody else with that question. Alex just schooled us with the letter of the law. Nobody's going to beat it. I don't care who you are. I love everybody on the panel. But Alex just did that, so the rest of y'all can take a back seat. Moving forward, next question. Let's talk about the executive order over telehealth, right? So rural health in America. President Trump came out and he says, I'm tired of my rural people traveling 2.5 hours one way for medical assistance. And when they get there, there's no room at the inn. There's no medical provisions or help for them under COVID conditions or pharmaceutical pricings. Brian Slawinski, last word. Here we go. Coming to you. What is your intent? What is your perception as a potential senator? How do we fix this?
Well, I think telehealth is a great tool and needs to be used more and more. We have the technology. The whole problem with that is getting out broadband out into the rural areas. That's a big part of the problem right there now. Telehealth is great because it allows you to bring experts in on certain things. You could be a practicing general practitioner, and you can bring into the conversation specialists when it comes to certain things that you can bring in via telehealth, and that allows for a lot better outcomes for the patients. And I think that's great. Also, because of COVID, obviously, the less in person, the better. I mean, my wife is a physician; she uses telehealth all the time, and you know it's huge, and it's going to be a bigger and bigger percentage of of our healthcare and how it's delivered. And that's great because it allows for more specialized medicine to come out to more rural areas and to help people. And if you're helping people, that's even better.
Brian, outstanding review. Thank you for your contribution tonight. I look forward to you being on the panel on future shows, hopefully next week. Alex Johnson, same to you, brother. I know you came in on the back end of the show. I look forward to you coming in earlier next week with us. Reminder, everybody watching, our show is now from 7 to 8. We've got to cut 30 minutes out of it because your little kids won't go to bed when they're supposed to, and we're not going to interfere with that. Parents matter. Parents' lives matter. And we're trying to assist you. Moving forward, last 2 minutes for you, Derek Grayson. The microphone is yours, brother. 2 minutes. That's all you get, and I'm going to cut you off.
Well, I'm just going to comment on telehealth. I've got mixed feelings about it. If I just need to use it to ask the doctors some questions, et cetera, it's a wonderful tool. But if I need to go in for them to do blood work, I need to be able to go in for them to draw blood and run tests and do whatever, my physical and whatnot. My last physical was, telehealth. And, I just really wasn't feeling that. I wanted him to listen to my heart and, look in my ears. You can't do all of that with telework. So for some things, to talk about my medications and whatnot, I'm good with it. Aside from that, I want to be able to put my hand, or rather have a doctor put his hands on me and have me cough.
I got to tell you, I was getting ready to introduce a Star Point program that I want to do on the show. And that is tonight, the statement of the night belongs to Alex Johnson. I mean, absolute slam dunk. But a closing verbiage of the night, Derek Grayson, that... Anybody over 40 understood what you were saying. Josie Cruz, you got 2 minutes.
I thought you, Derek. Yes. We need our doctors to see us in person. Yes, but we need to consider too that the technology is changing constantly, and as a professional coder, medical coder. This year, I decided to not file again the renewal of my certification. Why? Because this advance in technology will change all that. So it was not productive for me to keep on paying money in this CPC, whatever, and spending money and this and that when I know that's coming soon. So putting that on the side, yes, we need to see our doctors. We need to, when it comes to our veterans, yeah, we need to open the door more wide so they can go when they need to go. And remember, if you want to see how medical attention directed by socialist system, just look at the VA. That's our future if we continue enforcing or promoting universal care for everybody. That reminds me so much back home. So we need to get rid of that, open up the market, and everybody's gonna have the doctor that they want to be touched by. I yield.
Josie, we thank you for your contributions tonight. I'm so glad that you brought up Department of Veterans Affairs and Medical Services. I, as a retired service member and a 100% disabled veteran, would love to have that conversation on this panel at a more appropriate time. Ladies and gentlemen, tonight, we have traveled around the globe. We've looked at the hottest topics of our policies and the last political things that have hit headlines. We've talked about our Senate debates. We've talked about our Congress. We've talked about the White House, executive orders. We've talked about the overreach and limitations. We've been joined by political hopefuls, candidates, experienced candidates, political activists, and our legal panel contributors. However, I need to talk to you about something before we close this show. Throughout history, we have watched things fall constantly, time and time again, from the Tower of Babel to the Berlin Wall, from the towers on 9/11 in New York and our affiliating surrounding areas. Folks, it is time that we, the American people, acknowledge that we have the power to break and bring down the cabal. This elitist mentality has no place in our country. This country was defined and built on the backs of our sons and daughters, our young children that stepped to the front line under the leadership of fathers and grandfathers, nurtured and provided for by grandmothers and mothers, that were all mutually service to one goal. And that one goal was the survival of liberty without rule and communism, condemnation, that all men would be created equal, that we would share in our convictions to love one another, and that we would surrender to the aid of Almighty God before we surrendered to a rogue government. In today's day and time, I ask of you, if you're listening to this, watching this, or anybody tells you about this, the truth is, you've got people right here on this station that are willing to go in and be obedient to the people. They're willing to be servants, not leaders, servants. Servitude matters. Jesus himself presented himself a servant all the way to the cross and pledged that he would continue to be beyond. If you continue to look for leaders as your leadership, you will miss all of the servants that are in line that will bring you to the table where you belong. Tonight, I want to thank you for sitting at our table. This is the Round Table every Wednesday night, 7 to 8. My name is Danny Ellison. I'm your host. And tonight, we all here at the Round Table bid you farewell.